Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Content Calendars, what they are and why they are important. I want to give everyone a little heads up that this is not just a presentation, this is a conversation. So feel free to post any questions or comments to YouTube or tweet to us directly at RPS123shoot, SHOOT. And if you are listening to this after the live broadcast, still ask away. Any comments or questions you post in the comments, we will respond to. Let's go ahead and get started then. All right, just to give you a little bit of background for anybody who is new to our webinar series, I am Amanda Sutton. I'm Creative Director and CEO here at Rock, Paper, Scissors. And we are a branding and marketing firm. We have been in the business for 30 years now, so we've seen a lot of change, and we have done a lot of changing ourselves to keep up with the time. We focus on our client's brand, not just the logo and marketing collateral, but the entire experience. So content calendars fall right into a regular practice that we do with most of our clients as we're looking at what does your brand experience look like. So today, joining me at the webinar is our content marketer, Valerie Kinney. Turn that over to you.
All right, well, the first question that we need to get started with is, what is a content calendar? That's something that I hear a lot of people ask whenever we're getting planning with their marketing strategies and that type of thing, because we're the marketing people, and a lot of times there are business people who don't really get the marketing side of things, and especially with content. And so if you're familiar with the print industry, magazines, newspapers, that kind of thing, you may have heard the term editorial calendar. They're basically the same thing. It's a tool that helps you schedule when you're going to post your content and even where you're going to post it. They let you visualize how your content's going to be distributed over a certain time frame. That could be over a week, a month, the entire year. And this just helps you plan around different events that your organization may be putting on so that you can incorporate that into your plan, spotting gaps that need to be filled, and helping you set deadlines for yourself. And it's also a resource for your entire team so that everyone can stay on track as you're creating the content. And I really like this quote from MailChimp that says, "Your content calendar is a framework of the ongoing story you want to tell about your business." So it just helps you get that story of, the stuff that might not necessarily be upfront with your business, but it's still important to your story and your brand.
All right, so let's start this off with why we're even talking about this, and start with why are content calendars important? So first up, they help you stay on track. They're setting up best practices for your editorial planning by creating good posting habits with a consistent schedule. And that's really kind of what this comes down to. People will see you as a resource, and it's part of your credibility, but that only happens if you are consistent with it. So, and beyond that, a content calendar also allows you to be proactive about your message. Planning takes the panic out of what to post so that you sound put together, and your marketing then is a reflection of your brand and product. You don't want your marketing and your messaging that's going out to be last minute, oh, we need to get this out, or we need to get something out, what should we talk about? There is a downside to planning, and that is that life happens, so change is inevitable. But because you have a plan in place, it allows you to weigh the choices of sticking with your plan or changing course to deal with the situation that's come up. And that allows you to be conscious about your messaging and the position that you're putting out in the out to your audience. And this allows you to, instead of being shooting from the hip, you actually sound put together even in a crisis situation. Hopefully it's not that, but that's a big part of this, is being able to have a pulled together overall feel for your messaging that's going out.
Also, content calendars kind of put everything in one location. It's that space for all of your team that's going to be working with the content marketing plan to have that centralized spot or location to keep the ideas and topics together. That way there's not 5 different documents or sticky notes all over the place. It's just all in one place. Anybody can access it, and if someone has to step in at the last minute, which we'll get into later, but if somebody has to step in at the last minute, they can help take over because it's right there for them. And it also lets you spot opportunities for when you can overlap content between your blog, social media. You might want to embed a relevant tweet or a video that you put out on your YouTube channel into an email newsletter or on a blog post. You can figure out which campaigns you want to post directly to Facebook and that sort of thing. And it also helps you determine what content should be promoted with, you have the paid options now on social media. You can boost posts on Facebook, you can promote them on Instagram, that sort of thing. So it kind of helps you figure out where people are reading stuff and how you want to promote that so that you get more engagement later on. It also helps you ensure that your content, and this is especially important for blog content, is varied enough so that you're regularly posting industry news, company updates, how-to and listicle articles, case studies, and all that. It just helps you create good variety. You can see where you might have some redundancies and shift things around. And it also keeps you from just posting really random stuff that might not connect with your audience. And then the content calendar is also important because it helps you avoid a lack of content for a long period of time. Those gaps in posting, you might lose audience members if that happens. So it helps you with the variety and just the regular posting. And then, of course, adding in the editorial cycle to your content calendar, that helps you keep multiple pairs of eyes on the content, reviewing it for spelling and grammar, broken links, all the things that you want to make sure aren't happening before you put the content out there to your audience so that you're not having to go back and fix it later. And you can also note when the content is ready to be reviewed by the next person in line and when it should be finalized and ready to send out to your audience. And then I have a couple quotes I wanted to share from my past. When I think about content calendars and how they help you plan and ensure that you're posting your content regularly, the first one is one from my high school US history teacher who always said, prior preparation prevents pitiful poor performance. And he called them the 6 Ps, and he made us memorize them because his philosophy was no is not an acceptable answer. So if we kept this in mind, we would come to class prepared to discuss and talk about those things. And it's just stuck with me as I've gotten into the content marketing world about how we plan strategically so that we're getting the right messages out there for our clients and their audiences. And then the next one comes from my college advisor who always said, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. He always said that in reference to scheduling meetings, and that stuck with me in terms of planning content because it holds me and anybody on my team accountable to, we're supposed to send this newsletter out on this day, or we've got to get this social media post up, whatever the case may be. It's just helping you stay accountable because you're being intentional with planning ahead of time and then setting yourself up to be more successful when you're actually executing the content and getting it out there to your audience.
In fact, the reason that we do webinars and set up dates for people to join us is so that we have our content on a schedule and a calendar, and so that we hold ourselves accountable. So you start to figure out practices like that work with your organization. So we're firm believers and follow both of those to a T. All right, so now that we know why we need them, let's talk about who uses a content calendar. And the short answer is anyone that's part of your marketing team. But more specifically, the members using the content calendar will be anyone that contributes content to your marketing program, which can include not only written content, but also video content, photography, and infographics, just to name a few of those. With that in mind, in addition to the content writer or manager, you'll also want to include a social media manager, a designer, a designated proofreader, and a project lead or manager. So it can be a pretty big team, and if you're a smaller organization, you get to wear all of those hats. But it's really important to understand how complicated getting your content out, which I think is great why we associate this back to print editorial schedules, because getting your message out on social media and in blogs and in emails Might seem like it's just a couple clicks of a button, but to really have that strategy in place takes a lot of different working parts in order to have that really cohesive and strong message in place. It's so easy to off the cuff send something out and it just falls flat, and you run the risk of losing your audience, their attention over something like that. So if you're going to only contact them, once a month with a newsletter, you want to make sure that it's what they really want to hear from you and that you have the best foot forward. All right, so now that you know what a content calendar is, why it's important, who uses it, let's look at what you need to get one started.
All right, so first you kind of need to determine what type of document you want to keep your content calendar in, and a lot of it will depend on what technology you're using in your office. There are a lot of great resources out there that can help you out. So many places, if you just Google content calendar templates, you can find a whole host of options to look at. And some businesses just like to use a calendar like your calendar in Gmail. We use Google Sheets, and we have separate tabs for social media content, blog content, our webinar schedule and the topics that we're going to discuss, and even our newsletter and just the general idea of the things that are going to go in the newsletter. Like I said, there are tons of options out there you can look at for inspiration. And there are formats based on Excel files, PDFs. There are even WordPress plugins that you can use. So it's just a matter of kind of taking the time to explore and working with your team to figure out what option is going to work best for you guys and then going with it.
And we'll post this as a blog write-up after the broadcast, and we'll include some links of some of our favorite ones to help you get started.
The next step you need is to start making your game plan. You can plan it on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, or even an annual basis. It just kind of goes back to depending on how many people are on your team and how much time you have to start with. But as you get started, I think you'll see that the more intentional you are about planning, you'll build that into your schedule so that you can build a better content marketing plan and strategy moving forward. And then you want to start exploring some other options, starting with themes.
Yes, I love themes. I think themes are a really important part when you're looking at a big calendar because there's so many things that you could talk about. When you really start to drill into what message do you want to get out there, you could spend all of your time writing content and pushing it out there, but you also want to be really respectful of your resources, and one of those really important resources is your time. And so the idea of having a theme, whether it's a quarterly theme, a monthly theme, whatever that breaks out as you start to look through what you want your message to be, that really helps focus your energy. It also helps you recycle some content too. The world out there is incredibly busy with messages going out there. You don't need to have a unique idea on every platform. You want to repeat that because you want to know where your audience is and understand what that experience is like. And they're not going to be on every platform all the time. So repetition is good. That's just a principle of marketing, that whole idea that somebody needs to see it 7 times before that little light bulb goes off. You want to take that into consideration, and a theme really helps you do that. When I'm usually working with clients, I usually suggest starting with an overall theme for the year that ties in that bigger message that you're trying to get out, and then breaking it into each month to have a very specific idea. People really want to get more detail about what you're doing, your products, your services. If you stay super high level, you're no different than anybody else. And you want to be able to get into the details, into the grit of what's actually going on and what makes you different. And this will allow you, because you can get so specific. And it goes back to, you want to be able to get specific, but you don't want to spend all this time on it. So if you're writing a blog post that can then tie into the social media messages that are going out, that goes into, and all of that goes into your email, you've just used your time really wisely by consolidating your efforts under a theme. And then a very important part of this is also having target posting dates. Tools like Google Analytics and Facebook Insights will be especially helpful in determining what days and times your content should be published by showing you what days and or times people are looking at or engaging with your content. They're great analytics to say how often somebody is or what time they're on your website the most. And even all the social media platforms offer that as well. And so you want to make sure that you are getting your content out there when it's important, especially if you're doing something like Twitter, when the life of a tweet is like 20 minutes, you want to make sure you're there when your audience is there. Otherwise, they're just not going to see it. And this can also help you determine what types of content are more appealing for your audience, because you can start to track and measure. So it becomes an important part of this.
And then next, I like to have a color key and assignments on my content calendar. The key, just you can break it down by colors and fonts and what each of those mean. For instance, anything that's highlighted in yellow on our content calendar, that is designated for Instagram content. Green is blog content. Bold-faced content is stuff that has gone through our editorial cycle and is ready to be posted. It's been approved, so we can post it or we can schedule it. And then also making assignments, especially for larger content marketing teams, it just helps to designate who owns that certain task or that part of the plan. And then that helps not only spread the work out, but it also helps if you have a team member who is out and it's a last minute thing and you need somebody else to step in that's not necessarily their day-to-day job, but they can step in on a moment's notice and help get that content out there so you're not having the delay in schedule. And it also just helps your team hold each other accountable so that you can schedule time to review that content and make sure that you're getting it scheduled when it needs to go out.
And there's some really intense tools out there for this. And you hear us talk a lot about just using Google Sheets. You can be as elaborate or as simple with your content calendar setup. The more important thing is that you create something and then you start doing it, and that you don't let that technology get in the way of you building a system in order to get your team on the same page and keep things moving. So a lot of it just depends on, what is your priority as a company? How elaborate do you need your content planning tool to be? What kind of users are you going to be having on this? So do you have a lot of people who are, pen and paper kind, or do you have people who are a lot more technologically inclined? So you need to take that into account when you're looking at the type of tools that you're going to use for this. So that's just something to keep in mind, that there really is no right or wrong. The only wrong is not doing it.
And then lastly, you need some flexibility. As Amanda mentioned, life happens, things come up. You may find an opportunity to write a blog article on the spur of the moment that wasn't necessarily a part of your plan, but it's something that fits. Or you may wind up with another project that is just keeps you so busy, which is a good thing, but at the same time, you may not get to your postings for the day. And so unless it's extremely timely content, you can always go back and post it later. So don't beat yourself up over it if for some reason, something falls through the cracks and you're not able to get that Facebook post up today. Like I said, if it's not super timely content, just post it tomorrow. So just always stay flexible and give yourself some wiggle room as you're planning.
The biggest thing overall when we're looking at content calendars and trying to build a really good message process for yourself is you need two important things. You need good content and ideas that you want to put out there, and a lot of people think that's what you need, and that's the key of it. But actually, probably the more important part is building a process that works with your organization and doesn't hold you back. Probably the most critical thing is that you need to build a system for yourself that is easy, because if it isn't easy, other things are going to become priorities and you're not going to do it. So a lot of this is talking through, the different challenges that you run into of, how do you engage your audience? How do you bring everybody together? What type of technology you're going to use and what type of messaging you're going to use? So those are some really important things to work through as you're starting to hopefully plan for 2017, is who is on your content calendar planning strategy, like who is going to be creating it, who's going to be editing. So outlining the roles of the people in there, then starting to work through All right, what do those messages need to look like? Who's going to be creating them? Who's going to be posting them? Who's going to be commenting on them? Things like, do you have a social media policy in place so if something goes wrong, you know what to do? And then it's actually getting into building that content calendar in a way that works with your organization, and making sure that you have that mapped out and ready to go. And once you have those key pieces in place, and it does take some time to figure out how you want it to work, it becomes really easy and it's just second nature. And it's amazing how much more you can post, how much more you can engage with your audience and have conversations once you have that structure in place. And so it is not by any means simple and is not by any means easy, but if you take the time to structure it and do it right, you can get to a point where it is easier.
I agree. And it may take some trial and error to figure out what works best for your team. So like I said earlier, when you're looking at different types of content calendars, play around with it a little bit, see what works, and then you've got an idea, okay, this is the best option for our team, and that's what we're going to go with moving forward. So don't be afraid to play around with it a little bit.
Exactly. All right. So we're going to open this up for questions, and we got a whole bunch of questions ahead of time that we're going to start with. All right, Valerie, I'm going to put you on the spot. You ready? All right.
Let's go for it.
Why can't I just wing it?
Well, when you wing it, there's not really a lot of consistency, and your content is most likely going to seem really random. I've worked with clients who have tried that before, and it just didn't work for them. Having your content items down on a calendar not only helps you avoid the randomness and the inconsistency, but it also helps you develop content that your audience is more likely going to engage with later on, whether it's commenting on a blog, sharing it on Facebook, whatever the case may be. Having that strategy and that plan down on your calendar is just going to help you tremendously. I can't stress that enough.
All right. So true. All right, so here's the next one. If there's only one or two people working on your content, is a content calendar really necessary?
All right. In my personal opinion, yes. In all capital letters, yes. We've said it before, but it helps spread your work out evenly among the team so that one person's not getting overwhelmed with what they have to do. And it also helps you spread the content across your marketing channels, plus you can work to other people's strengths. If one person is better at crafting the message and another person's better at planning and figuring out when we need to send these messages out, that it kind of creates not only the checks and balances system with your editorial cycle, but balancing it out so that your message is getting out there consistently and it's smooth and everybody's happy.
We are a team of two doing our marketing, and I don't think we could survive without a content calendar.
No, I don't think so either.
All right, up next. Do you find it easier to plan a year at once or to break it up into smaller segments?
That is such a good question. And honestly, I think it will depend largely on the size of your organization when it comes to the planning and how many people are on your team. For a lot of businesses, I do think it's worth planning your content themes for the year at first, and then as you're drilling down into more specific types of content and the topics, you may want to take it a month or two at a time when you're first getting started. And like we said earlier, there's going to be some growing pains. And so, if this is your first time working on developing a content calendar, take it in smaller chunks because it will get overwhelming if you don't. And so, to give you guys an example, we've really been working on beefing up our content calendars and being more consistent and proactive about it the past several months and as we're going into 2017. And so for our social media content in particular, I work on it about a quarter of it at a time, but I always leave myself some extra room. So if new ideas come in and that type of thing, we can write that content out, send it to Amanda to review, and we may have some other team members review it too, and then get it on our schedule to post. And then the one thing that I really would recommend for people is to try different approaches. If you are new to the idea of a content calendar and creating that editorial cycle and posting schedule, just try some different approaches over the first few months of the year, see what works best, and then develop your ongoing policy for your business from there on.
And you actually overlapped a little bit with this question, which is how do you balance pre-planned content a pre-planned content calendar with wanting to capitalize on current events, topics, i.e. newsjacking.
Awesome. Like we said earlier, it's just keeping that flexibility in place and really just having an open mind. For this specifically, it sounds a little bit more like it would be a combination of maybe some Facebook and Twitter content and then blog content too, potentially. And so for a lot of industries, you can capitalize on the current news and events. I will take interior design, for example. Pantone at the end of every year releases their color of the year for the next year, and that's something that a lot of design industry professionals like to write about because it's relevant and it usually will help their content get up on that first couple pages of Google in the searches. So that would be kind of the newsjacking idea. And so just leaving yourself that flexibility for, I know when certain trend reports are going to come out that we kind of want to piggyback on, and just leaving some open spots that you can plug that into.
Well, and then consciously leaving, like on your calendar, 3 posts per week are going to come from trending topics, and make sure you've scheduled time and that your team can handle whatever review process that you put in place. So you just make it a part of it. If that is part of your strategy, is to have some pre-planned content and some current events in there, is you plan out all the current events, have that in place, or sorry, you plan out all the pre-planned content, and then current events, just make sure that's part of your communication culture, is that you have somebody regularly looking for that. And I think it's really critical in those, if that is your strategy, is to designate that to somebody and make sure that they have ownership and responsibility for collecting, posting, curating, whatever that process ends up looking like, so that it is happening if that's really important to your message. So it was a great question. All right, let me see. I think we are in good shape, and that covers it for us now. Thanks, guys, for listening. We'll follow up with a blog post with more details, and we will be back.